Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by AgCarolina Farm Credit. Well, to get us started, I'm just going to kind of bring up some of the major points we're going to be discussing in this updated video here. First thing is we're going to finally see some much cooler air finally arrive. So this is a forecast showing you day 5 through day 10. So this is really getting us toward the end of this week and the start of the weekend, showing much cooler air coming. We're going to see a few big cold fronts kind of sweeping through the Corn Belt, getting all the way over here into the coastal Carolinas. Now, with that, we do have a couple of chances of precipitation coming in here, but much of the major, really wet conditions are going to be stuck back here in Texas, since we're going to have to talk about that as well. And then what I'm going to wrap this video up talking about is a discussion about winter. So hang on for that, because we're going to really look at some of our long-range guidance to try to understand what winter is going to look like this year. So let's get right on into it. Here's a map showing you the last 7 days of total accumulated precipitation, and what we're really focusing in on here is what Michael did. You can see Michael's track coming right in through like that. Several locations in here, especially as we got back in toward the mountainous regions of parts of the Carolinas, seeing much more than 6 inches of rainfall. And remember, this came hot on the heels of Florence, which just dumped an absolute deluge of water in parts of North and South Carolina. So this was just another kind of a blow here to the farm economy in the Carolinas, just really decimating crops again. Now, down here in the Florida Panhandle, we actually had landfall at 155 mile per hour. That was the max sustained winds, and that is 1 mile per hour short of being a Category 5 strength storm. So Michael will certainly be retired, as will Florence, and both of them having a major impact on the Carolinas. Now, I want to stretch this out and look over the last 30 days, because this really shows you what the tropical systems have done to the Carolinas. Look at this. We have a huge section right in through here where we're talking at well over 10 inches of rain. In some locations, we know, getting here into the coastal areas, seeing well over 30 to 50 inches of rain. Very wet. But with this as our backdrop, we're going to start off by talking about the wet weather in Texas and how that might a couple of times spread over here to the Carolinas. So here we go. Now, over the last 72 hours, thankfully, things have been relatively dry in this section of the country. So we've had 3 good days over the weekend of drier conditions, which is what we need. But we'll be watching the weather in this area over the coming days as it might possibly spread here over toward the southeast. That'll be one thing to watch. And we're going to have a couple of these big cold fronts coming sliding through the Corn Belt, getting down to the Carolinas as well. So let's get right on into it. How things are going to start off this week, well, they're going to look like this. We're going to have about a mile above our heads a flow pattern coming out of the Gulf of Mexico and out of Canada that looks something just like this. And right in through this area here, this is a flow map on Monday looking about a mile above our heads. We're going to be featuring this region right in here where we're going to focus quite a bit of lift in the atmosphere, and that's going to bring in quite a bit of showers and precipitation. Now, to show you what that looks like, what I'm going to animate for you next, this is looking at over the next 60 hours. So this is 60 hours getting us through 8 a.m. on Wednesday. And what do we see? We see this region right in through here as having the heaviest precipitation, especially back in this part of Texas, where we may get some locations 3, maybe to 6 inches of rainfall. Now, in North and South Carolina, before this kind of influences the weather over us, we will be seeing some kind of hit or miss showers in this area. So this is not widespread, really heavy rainfall, but we do have to start off our week the chance for some showers, quite a bit of cloudiness to get things going as well. Now, getting beyond that, let me kind of take you out here kind of every 6 hours looking at our longer range European model through the next 10 days or so. So let me step this back. Now, what are we going to see here? By the time we get into the day on Monday, yes, some scattered showers. But really, it's going to be this front that comes swinging through just like this that could be bringing in some showers into the day on Tuesday. But again, look at what's going on over here in Texas as we start off the week. So as we keep moving forward, what we see is that by the time we get through Wednesday into Thursday, right in through there, I'm kind of rocking back and forth Wednesday through the day into early, until really, I guess, late Wednesday night. That'll be the time period that we could possibly be bringing in our next chance of precipitation. Again, that's forming on that same boundary I just kind of highlighted for you a few moments ago. Now, as we move forward with that, what do we see? Well, after this, look at this dominant area of higher atmospheric pressure that moves in. That's going to clear everything out toward the end of the week, but also usher in some much cooler air. And as we continue to play things forward, well, what we're going to see is some flow around that high, bringing more moisture right back into that same spot into Texas. So as we continue to play this on forward, watch what happens. That spreads again to the east with the next system that comes through bringing another chance for showers on Saturday. Now, what do we see and what do we not see? Well, again, we see another big dome of high pressure moving in on Monday. What I don't see with each one of these big changes in the total flow of the atmosphere is any really, really heavy, sustained, long-lasting precipitation events. So while we do see a few times over the next 7 or 8 days here, chances for showers, it's not going to be one of these things where it's just going to rain continuously for several days. So I want you to see that in the forecast. If we put it all together, take a look at these two maps. Over there on the left, that's the next week's worth of precipitation. So we can really see that it's going to be this area that's going to be quite wet. Remember, that little pocket coming in through there midweek. But when you stretch it out over the next 15 days, looking at total precipitation anomalies, the biggest wet anomalies are going to be in Texas. But we do carry a slight wet bias in through here across the Carolinas, simply due to the fact that we have this system spreading early and then a couple of big cold fronts coming through. And as they arrive, lifting some air, bringing in the chances for showers. Certainly after they pass, much cooler weather coming in. Now, to show you how much cooler weather is coming in, take a look at this. Starting off in the upper right-hand corner, this is a map that shows you the next 5 days in terms of temperature anomalies. We can see the cold air waiting in the wings that's going to be coming down here. And by the time we get to the day 5 through day 10 forecast, we see that we're fully locked into a bit of a cooler pattern. To show you this kind of stepwise here, I'm going to animate for you over here on the left what we're looking at in terms of temperature anomalies every 6 hours. And I pause this right here early Wednesday morning because up until that point, we hang on to those warmer temperatures. But watch in that area that I circled as we move past Wednesday, getting into Thursday. There's that first big front that comes through, knocking temperatures way back. And what do we see here? By the time we get into the weekend, another reinforcing shot of colder air. There it is on Saturday, getting into Sunday, Monday. So that's where the pattern flip really changes. And what we're going to see here is the building of a ridge out west and maybe a more semi-permanent trough here over the eastern part of the country. So let's talk about that. This next animation shows you the flow of the atmosphere where we're watching the jet stream in its troughs and ridges. Now, early in the week, what are we dominated by? This big area of higher atmospheric pressure aloft. So we call that a ridge sitting there. But there's a lot of cold air kind of pent up here, stretching from the Hudson Bay, getting into the Great Lakes. And that's going to be the system that we're going to have to watch as we move forward. Now, what's going to push that cold air south eventually is the development of this bigger ridge over the western United States. And that's just how this works. If there's a ridge over western United States and Canada, there has to be a trough over the east. And so this will be the first big push of some cooler air. Now, we might moderate toward the end of the week, but watch this. Let me get rid of that line there for you. Watch this as we get into next weekend. Here comes that second big surge. See it there? Friday into Saturday, bringing in that colder air again. And as long as we keep this pattern that features this trough sitting here off of the in the Gulf of Alaska, a ridge over the western United States, we will see a trough plunging here over the east. Now watch as I continue to animate this out. What do we notice here? By the time we get into the final week of October, we get set up with that same pattern. Look at this. Just features a ridge here, trough sitting out in the Gulf of Alaska, and another trough sitting here over the East Coast. Now, what does all of this mean? This just means that the cooler pattern we're going to be establishing doesn't look like it's going anywhere anytime soon. And I want to talk about what we're seeing beyond that. So as we finish this video, let's take a longer look. This is a map showing you the surface air temperatures, getting us out all the way here into November. And what we're seeing here is kind of the reflection of a feature I want to pay close attention to, and I just circled it for you there. What you got right in this area will be the development of what's called a Modoki or Modoki El Nino. And that's one where there's a lot of warm water stretching right there on the equator in the Pacific Ocean, but cooler water down over South America. Now, full-blown El Ninos bring a lot of warm water clear down to here, but this one's not going to do that. And what I want to do is I want to assess what that means for temperatures. So let's start off here with a December through February temperature forecast by the National Multi-Model Ensemble. Now, you can clearly see the El Nino event and the cooler water here. But what this model fails to capture, and this is a known bias in it, is the proper temperature anomaly pattern for much of the world. You see, this model has a very well-known warm bias. So when you see near average temperatures forecast in the region I just circled for you here, that more than likely means near average to cooler than average weather there. And I think this is what we're going to see throughout much of this winter. I'll label a W up here where I'm expecting to see warmer weather, and a C down here where I'm expecting to see cooler weather. Now let's see if we have other models that support this. Next, this is the December, January, and February forecast from the JAMS Tech model. This is a Japanese model. And what do we see? A very similar thing, with a ridge coming across the Pacific Northwest like that, and probably a deep plunging trough at times here sitting over the southeast. Again, we see another model picking up on the cooler risks as we move throughout this winter. What about the best of our long-range models, the European model? Well, I've got November, December, January, and February temperature anomalies. And let's just kind of come down here to January, because I think this is the one that's going to give us the best clue as to what winter is going to look like. You see this whole region I'm circling, near average to cooler than average risks. What will the flow pattern likely do? It'll likely go into a ridge out here over the west and plunge into a trough. Now, what does that mean? Well, if that means you're going to have a near average to cooler than average winter from Texas up the East Coast, in terms of precipitation, it looks wet. Now that makes sense, because if there's a ridge out west and a trough here, that's a very active storm track out of the Gulf of Mexico running up the East Coast. Meanwhile, the Corn Belt looks dry. Now remember, this is a long-range forecast. We have to look at this stuff with a pretty big grain of salt. But this at least is a consistent picture with some of the analog techniques that we use. Plus, there's another thing I've been watching, which is this thing called the quasi-biennial oscillation. Now what does that mean? I'm just watching the winds deep in the stratosphere to kind of get a clue on what we're expecting in terms of temperature patterns. And it lines up with what the long-range European model is suggesting. So we'll keep giving you these updates each month as we see them come out. But it looks as though the West Coast is going to favor the warmer conditions this winter, with the East Coast possibly quite volatile. But you know what? That's East Coast weather every winter. It's volatile. That's why we release these videos once a week, to keep you clued in on the major weather features that drive agriculture in the Carolinas. And with that, I'm going to go and wrap up this forecast video. We hope you look forward to our next update coming out next week. Thank you.